Hello and welcome to another video from Dazzatron's Diorama Llama. So if you've been a subscriber to this channel for a while, you may have heard me mention my illustration work. I am an art teacher in a secondary school and I like to do illustration on the side. I don't always get a lot of time for that as a teacher. And also obviously with doing some of the videos for the diorama channel, don't always get a lot of free time, so sometimes I just need a bit of a kick or a push to kind of use my time well. So every year there's an event or an incentive, a challenge if you like, called Inktober, which you may have seen on social media. And this is essentially where artists, whether you're professional or amateur, are encouraged to have a go at drawing every day across the month of October. So the challenge is to create 31 drawings. You don't have to do 31 drawings. Some people just do a handful of them. Some people do it every other day. Some people even just do one a week or try and see as far as they can get. And then, call it a day and then challenge themselves to do even more the following year. So I've done this on 3 occasions now. And if you scroll through the videos on Dazzatron's Diorama Llama, you'll see a video last year where I took upon myself the challenge of Inktober 2022. And I also had to go, I think it was a couple of years before that one, I think it was 2020. And so the first time I did this, I did manage to get all the way through, actually mainly using digital illustration. And I'll see if I can put a few of those up on this video, hopefully, if I can find them. And then last year I had to go using traditional kind of inking techniques. And actually you don't even have to use ink, even though it's called Inktober. The challenge is really just to do something creative. So you do get some artists using all sorts of materials, but I do like to kind of keep to the ink, just because it's a material I don't always get to use. So it's a nice opportunity to really try and kind of brush up my skills in that area, using kind of fine liners or ink and wash, or even just a good old biro kind of Bic pen is a great thing to draw with. And actually if drawing with fine liners is not something that you're used to, but you've had a go at some pencil drawing, I'd really encourage you to try a biro pen, as it works very much in the same way as a pencil. When you press heavier with a pencil, you get a darker shade. When you press lighter with a pencil, you get a lighter shade. Biros actually work in exactly the same way, by the pressure that you apply to the pen itself. So just using a regular ballpoint pen, you can get a variety of really nice shades. So it's a nice little kind of crossover from pencil to pen work, if you're not so confident in that area. Whereas when you come to use a fine liner, it's a much harsher line and you have to use kind of hatching, cross hatching, or kind of stippling techniques to create shades if you want to shade. But I definitely encourage you to have a go. And if you haven't tried Inktober before, again, try it. As I said, it's not for kind of just for professional artists. A lot of professional artists do use the challenge to promote their artwork and kind of post it on their social media kind of platforms, but really it is open to anybody of any skill level. So if you kind of want to challenge yourself to do something creative every day, certainly look up Inktober or look for other creative art challenges. It's a really good practice to kind of build up those habits of doing something every day, and it's hard. That's why it's a challenge. You start off well, you come up with lots of ideas, and then suddenly about halfway through, it becomes much more difficult to kind of juggle doing a creative challenge and all the rest of kind of life, really, the normal chores that you have to do in life, or duties and responsibilities. So it's definitely a challenge, but I thought I'd kind of walk you through the work that I've done over the past 31 days. It's actually at the filming of this video, there's one more day to go, and I've started that, so I will show you that. I just need to kind of add a bit of an ink wash over the top. And again, that's the beauty of Inktober. You don't have to be rigid in doing one a day. On occasions I've done a few in one day and then had a day off, so you kind of make it work how you want to work. But the challenge is to create 31 consecutive drawings. They also provide the prompts, so I'm not just coming up with these ideas myself. Everybody in the, well, internationally who've had a go with this have all started with the same prompt, which was dream. That was day one. And that's the beauty, really. When you actually follow this on social media, you get to see other people's interpretations of the same theme, and that's really nice. So yeah, so it's just really good. So I thought, as I did this last year, I would showcase again some of this illustration work. Some of it is quick and rushed, some of it I've taken a bit longer over, but I'd love to hear your comments. We don't create artworks to get feedback, but feedback goes a long way in kind of encouraging kind of creatives to kind of keep going. Not just in what I'm doing here, but even we've got a YouTube channels and things like that. It really doesn't cost anything to click a like button, or just had a comment just saying, if you've enjoyed it. It does go a long way to encouraging people to kind of keep producing content. So yeah, so let's have a look. So day one was dream. So I had the idea of kind of clouds, kind of and kind of roots. Yeah, so he's got this kind of tree kind of growing out of its head, and these kind of clouds are also kind of like leaves. And I suppose this little air balloon here is kind of like almost the spark of an idea, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of a kind of a light bulb shape as well. This was also where I came up with the idea of using the long neck and the kind of llama ears. I don't talk about where the name for Dazatron's diorama llama came from very much, because it was a bit of a random thing. I knew I wanted to make a diorama channel and kind of help beginners to kind of just have a go at creating their own dioramas for their action figures. And so I just wanted kind of a rhyming word, and llama popped in my head, and being a fan of Transformers and having a weird imagination, and then started to imagine what Megatron, the lead of the Decepticons, would look like as a llama. And so I started to kind of sketch that out and came up with the logo, which you see at the start of all my videos, and that was it. Then that kind of just stuck, and I just thought it's an unusual name, kind of works well with my name Daz, or Dazatron, as I use for the channel, and it just kind of went from there. So I suppose llamas have kind of do reappear sometimes in my work, as do bananas, strangely enough. Don't ask me why. So yeah, so I've got the llama ears, I've got the extended neck, but the kind of human face. And for some bizarre reason, rather than like kind of a woody coat that a llama would normally have, I decided to add this kind of knitted kind of jumper. And you'll see in the later illustrations that kind of knitted idea kind of stayed with me, which became a bit of a pain, if I'm being honest, because there's a lot of detail in knitted work. So I enjoy it, I enjoy the outcome, but yeah, I almost wish I'd never even came up with that idea, even though I do think I'll return to it at some point. So dream was my first one there. So kind of the idea is kind of dreams springing from this guy's head. So day two was spiders, and so again keeping with the knitted theme, and then we've got this little kind of spider head kind of sticking out there, and we've got his little legs inside his kind of knitted boots. And yeah, I really enjoyed actually creating the detail in this one. It's quite fun to do that. Time consuming but fun. And I just like the ideas of having the little thread going off the page, which kind of just draws your eye away from the illustration and makes you think that there's something else going on beyond the page itself. I'm also using a sketchbook for this. I don't always work in a sketchbook, but I'm trying to encourage myself to use sketchbooks a bit more often. I used to use them all the time when I was at art college, and I kind of got out of the habit, so I want to get back into using sketchbooks. So yeah, so there's my spider. Lots of people seem to really take to this one. Out of all the ones that I've posted, this definitely had one of the most likes anyway. So that was day 2, spiders. I hate spiders, by the way. Day 3 was path. Again, keeping with the llama idea, and if you're a man of my age, you might remember the old film Dr. Dolittle, and in that film there was a push me pull you, which was a 2-headed llama, and being a little kid at the time, that has always stuck with me, a 2-headed llama. I do like the weird and kind of fantastical, so yeah, so that came back to my mind for some bizarre reason, and I like the idea of kind of this creature almost arguing which way to go, and that kind of represents us in some way, isn't it? You know, when we have a choice to make, we can be very indecisive. Me in particular, I'm very indecisive, and so yeah, knowing which path to choose or which choice to make, it kind of represented that idea. And this guy looks very certain, whereas this guy is a little bit more unsure about which way to go. So that was path, and I'll just kind of bring that up just so you can see some of the fine line of work in there. But again, really enjoyed creating the patterns in that one. So day 4 was Dodge. Originally I was going to draw an image of a Dodge car, kind of Dukes of Hazzard style, and but decided, after being a big fan of manga, to go with this kind of action boxing scene. So I did look at some manga artists to see how they kind of used line work to create the impression of motion, and that's where I got this idea from. But keeping with the knitted theme, almost kind of went with that kind of Mexican wrestling kind of style. So yeah, decided to create these kind of knitted mittens or boxing gloves and masks. So that was Dodge. Yeah, yeah, I was pleased with the way that one turned out. So day 5, was it? 3, 4, yeah, day 5 was map. This idea came from Popeye. Yeah, Popeye the Sailor Man. Again, a cartoon from Fleischer Studios that I remember as a child. Always used to watch Looney Tunes. Used to love the Popeye cartoons. And I'd encourage you actually to go back and watch some of those Popeye cartoons, because the animation in there, particularly the backgrounds, are incredible. Considering it's such an old cartoon. I think it's the 1940s it was done. Might be a bit later than that, but they're really early cartoons. But the quality of them are amazing. And Fleischer Studios actually were the company that created the old Superman cartoons as well, which are also amazing in their quality. So Popeye was the inspiration for this, hence why we got his pipe, and we got the old guy who's kind of muscular, and this is kind of his travels. And so I kind of looked at the old kind of maps, and you got the old kind of sea creatures there, like kraken and stuff like that, and he's kind of, yeah, he's got this map tattooed on his body. So not so much detail in there, but again, just a bit of the inclusion of the knitted wear in there. So that was map. So day 6, I think it is. You have to excuse me if I get my days wrong, but that was golden. My initials are DJ Goldie, and there's actually a DJ called Goldie, and within that culture, I'm sure he had a golden tooth, or I don't know whether all his teeth were golden. So that kind of, yeah, sparked that idea. And some of my older illustrations kind of were based actually on the old Fleischer Studios, those kind of like bendy kind of figures. So if you think of Olive Oil from Popeye, or Betty Boop, they had those almost kind of like spaghetti kind of, or bendy legs and arms. And I've definitely been influenced by that in the past with my past illustrations. So this was a bit of a callback to that. We've got the knitted gloves in there. We've got the DJ kind of, kind of spinning his kind of vinyl discs there. The jelly bean eyes as well as a bit of a callback to some of my older illustrations. And then, of course, we've got the golden teeth. So day 7 was Drip. A bit of a homage to, I suppose, kind of Toxic Avenger and the real Ghostbusters and those kind of lines, the kind of grotesque, kind of drippy kind of lettering that you would see on kind of packaging and things like that. And for some reason you always seem to have eyeballs on these kind of things. So this was a bit of a quicker one for me. I wanted something a bit easier on that day. I was quite busy, so that was a quicker one to have a go at. So yeah, Drip, just the idea of almost like kind of melting wax or slime. So day 8, I think, was Bounce. And originally I was going to draw somebody on a space hopper, and then I had the idea of an astronaut kind of bouncing on the moon. And I do love astronauts. I did have the opportunity of creating the album cover for a group called Left Hand Man. I'd encourage you to check them out on Spotify. And I was privileged to create the cover, and I used a kind of a astronaut's helmet as part of that cover. And I've always just liked astronauts. There's something just quite cool about kind of space suits and things like that. So so this was an ink wash drawing. The problem with ink wash, as you can see there, it started to creep through and bleed into the next page, but actually kind of worked on that in some weird way, so it didn't bother me too much. But yeah, I had to be a bit careful about using a wash technique for that reason. So a lot of these aren't references to pop culture, whereas last year pretty much every day was a reference to some kind of pop culture thing, whether it's a film, a comic book, whatever it might be. Whereas this year I tried to kind of rely on my own imagination a little bit. However, this one here, Fortune, this is obviously a reference to Zoltar from the film Big. So if you remember the film Big, Tom Hanks's character, he uses this kind of fortune teller kind of machine, and you've got this kind of mechanic kind of puppet, almost like an animatronic type thing, and you would put your coin in and it would go inside the mouth, and then it would give you this kind of fortune card, a bit like a fortune cookie, and it would have, he kind of made this kind of wish, and he became an adult. So from a child he became an adult. So Zotar is a reference to that film, and just try to use a few different kind of mark making techniques there. But enjoyed doing that one. And then we've got Wonder. I don't know what day we're on now, but Wonder. And the idea with that one was in a desert, and you've got these stationary kind of cactuses here, and then this cactus decides to go for a walk. Why not? So so I've included the jumper there again. This one here, Spicy. Just like the idea of the faces that people pull when they eat something really hot. So that's where that came from, the idea of this kind of face ballooning out. And we've got the kind of knitted hoodie again, and also the kind of wash technique. And I was really pleased with the way that turned out. Just kind of build up your layers of tones. And it's got a nice 3-dimensional quality to that. So I was really pleased with that one. So that was Spicy. Then we move on to Rise. So Rise of the Phoenix. Wanted to go for a different style for this one, kind of a calligraphy, you know, Japanese or Chinese calligraphy style. So I'm using a brush pen. So rather than kind of like the solid nib, this is essentially a brush. That's what it is. And you can get some nice kind of variety of marks from that. And if you use the side of the brush, you can get these kind of nice brush strokes. So again, I wanted a quicker illustration for this one, so I went with that. And then I moved on to this one, and for some bizarre reason I decided to stipple, or scumble in this case, which is like kind of almost like a scribbling technique. Stippling is where you use dots to create the tone, and it takes forever. So instead of this being a quick drawing, as I thought it might be, because I decided to use that technique, as this is meant to be like a sand castle, kind of forming out of this man's head, I thought the dots would work really well and give the impression of sand, but it took ages to do that one. So I would have liked to have had more shadows and tonal effects, but it was taking too long. But I was quite pleased again with the outcome for that one. Then moving on to Dagger, and there's a film called The Shadow, based on the old Pulp magazine character of the same name. So if you think of kind of Flash Gordon, the Phantom, you may remember, as this is, you know, a channel for people who love their 80s cartoons, you will remember Defenders of the Earth. Defenders! And yeah, in Defenders of the Earth, you had the Phantom, Flash Gordon, was it Zatanna, the Magician? I've confused that with the other DC character. But they made a film with Alec Baldwin of The Shadow. I think that was in the 1990s. And there's a scene with this kind of dagger. And it's had this kind of face on it, and these kind of sharp, pointy teeth. And it ends up kind of attacking the Shadow in a few of the scenes. And so that kind of brought to mind this idea of this kind of face on top of a dagger. And then we've got these kind of weird kind of horns or bat wings, which is a little bit of a nod to Devilman, because I do quite like the Devilman character. So yeah, so that was Dagger. And then this is 2 days. So we had Angel and Demon, consecutive days. So for Angel, I didn't want to go for the normal kind of cherub or, you know, angel, just like a handsome or beautiful angel with wings. If you look at kind of the biblical descriptions of angels, they're quite weird. And obviously there's different types of angels as well. And often they're described as having lots of eyes, or eyes in the wings and things like that, or being part animal and all sorts of kind of weird, crazy stuff. So I decided to kind of stick with that idea and have this kind of head full of eyes and take almost kind of a cutesy, almost like kind of a pop figure kind of approach. So he's got his flaming sword here, because again, the angel in the Garden of Eden had a flaming sword. And so I kept with the same style for Demon. Again, almost like a pop figure kind of style. Both of them wearing their kind of knitted outfits. And so he's almost got this kind of dragon type lizard texture there. And I think they look quite cool together. So yeah, again, quite pleased with how they look. And then I really liked this one. Don't know why. I do like beetles. Bizarrely, I did want a pet beetle at one point, but that wasn't going to happen. So I remember going to a weird exotic pet fair, and they had all sorts of, I remember them. There's a whole load of people with their hair dyed like skunks, actually walking pet skunks, which is quite an image. And there was another guy who had these rhinoceros beetles. And I remember holding one of those, and they are just really, really cool things. They're amazing. And so, yeah, so the idea of saddle, I thought, well, let's put a saddle on something else. And weirdly enough, the saddle kind of echoes the shape of the head of a rhinoceros beetle, and I quite like that. And I kind of stuck with my kind of character from earlier on with kind of Dream and the two-headed llama there, the push me pull you. So I kind of took that character again and kind of developed that a little bit further. This guy in a onesie with a long neck and kind of llama ears, and yeah, that was that. Again, mixture of techniques, so kind of using a brush pen and micron pens. And I've used micron pens for most of these, and they are fantastic pens. Actually not that expensive. You can find them on Amazon or lots of art shops. But I see a lot of kind of professional kind of comic artists using micron pens. So I was given some by my colleague at work, and they just make you want to use them. So definitely would recommend micron pens if you've never used those and you want to start some fine liner work. So then we move on to plump. So it wasn't actually a plump fish. That was an idea. It was kind of plump lips. I was thinking kind of fish lips. You know, some people have kind of these kind of Botox kind of treatments now and have these really big kind of fish lips. That's what came to mind when I saw the word plump. And so I thought, okay, let's do a fish in a knitted jumper. What would that look like? And there we go. So that was the idea behind plump. And then we move on to frost, and straight away I kind of thought of a frost giant or frost king. And of course, yeah, my head then goes to Adventure Time, and I absolutely adore Adventure Time. It's one of those cartoons where I got to share that experience of watching it with my daughters when they were younger. And there's a lot of cartoons that they used to watch on the Disney Channel which were just awful. But Adventure Time was amazing, and even after they go to bed, I would still watch Adventure Time because it was just such a creative and surreal and bizarre show, and I absolutely loved it. And so, yeah, I couldn't help but think of Simon from Adventure Time, and of course, I think it's Gunter, isn't it, the penguin? So I thought I'd include him in there, and sure enough, lots of people got the reference to that, so that was really cool. And decided to use a different kind of mark making technique. I don't know what this is called, where you kind of create these little kind of hatches, these different squares, different directions, but I thought that would work quite well with the ice effect. So that was that one. So chains, this was a difficult one. I wanted the idea of knitted chains, keeping the knitted theme. What would that look like if you was breaking that chain? So these kind of strands of kind of wool kind of pulling apart. And I'm not completely sure how effective it is, but it's, you know, it's got a bit of force to it. It does look like it's being pulled apart. So I was reasonably happy, but not fully satisfied with how that one turned out. So that was chains. Then we had Scratchy. This was another quicker one. Straight away I thought about a flea. So fleas always make me feel kind of scratchy and itchy. Not to reference The Simpsons. And so I thought I'd go with a kind of scratchy technique, kind of pen technique. So using the fine line and just kind of doing it really quickly and being almost kind of scribbly with the marks. As this is meant to be a close-up of a flea, and if you've ever seen a microscopic view of a flea, they're actually really quite grotesque and weird, and kind of look like there's something out of a horror movie. And these are kind of like hair follicles in the background there. So yeah, that was the idea for Scratchy. And then we move on to Celestial, keeping that technique that I used with the Ice King there in the background to kind of create the night sky. Again, lots of different mark making techniques. Bring in the knitted idea again with the kind of the hat, and bringing the jelly bean eyes back as well. Again, I don't know what it is about moons, but I do quite like moons. I quite like to draw them. And yeah, I was pleased with the way that turned out. And then Shallow. So struggled with that one. Initially, I was going to draw a shark in a paddling pool. I quite like the idea of that, and then came to an idea of a shallow person kind of looking or posing in a mirror. But I thought I'd do this kind of selfie generation of people who kind of take photographs of themselves posing and put them on social media, or photograph themselves even while driving a car. And so I looked at some comic book artwork, how they kind of shade kind of superheroes and things like that, using these kind of feathering techniques. And I enjoyed, using a thicker fine liner for this one to kind of create those kind of darker shadows. And so the idea is his head is a mobile phone, kind of taking a photograph of himself. And I thought that worked really well for shallow. Then we've got dangerous. So with dangerous, what came to mind, I was trying to think of some kind of dangerous situations. And again, the classic one is the kind of circus performers, the lion tamers who would put their heads in a lion's mouth. But really, when you think about it, men are much more dangerous than lions. So I quite like the idea of this lion with its head in a man's mouth, kind of showing how dangerous humans can be. So then this one here, remove. This was really fun to do. This is one of my favourites from all my illustrations for Inktober. So again, one of the cartoons I remember watching with the kids when they were growing up was SpongeBob SquarePants. I also remember back in the day loving Ren and Stimpy. And one of the things that both of those had in common was something called gross-ups. So this is where they would do a close-up of the main characters and kind of show all the kind of the veins and the creases and the texture to kind of the skin. And they really were quite gross. They are actually based off some illustrations of quite a famous illustrator, but I can't remember what his name is now. But I really like that idea. And, going to the dentist can be quite a traumatic experience. So, so that's where this kind of came from. This is not meant to be SpongeBob, by the way. It's just the idea of using all those kind of creases and muscles kind of tensing and snot and tears and sweat and all of that kind of stuff appearing all over the face of this poor guy as he's having his kind of tooth removed. So, but I did enjoy drawing that one. This was another one that has probably had more likes than any of the illustrations I've created in this series. Again, really enjoyed the pen work, the line work, creating a more realistic kind of beast, mixing kind of like a bat's nose and like a warthog's kind of teeth. I quite like almost like this kind of oriental dragon kind of feel to the hair. And of course, when you think of kind of beasts, you often think of horns. So I did those in there, and it was just really nice kind of playing with the shadows and the different line work. So this one seems to really kind of captured people when I've posted it on social media. So I think this one has received the most likes out of all the work so far. So this was Sparkle. Those of you again who've kind of watched this channel for a while know I love my anime and manga comics. And although I don't read as many as I did kind of back in the day when we had the kind of manga boom back in the 90s, when I think of that idea of Sparkle, I always think of these kind of manga kind of eyes. And I thought, that would work great for this. So I thought I'd do a close-up of these kind of eyes, or these kind of sparkly effects going on inside the iris. So that was quite cool. Massive. Again, tricky one. Originally, I had the idea of drawing like an enormous Godzilla-style hippo looking through an office window, and you got all kind of like the sky-rise kind of buildings. But I just didn't have time to draw all of those buildings. So the other idea was to have this kind of guy with this, is it a pompadour? Not sure if that's the right term, but yeah, this kind of big quiff. And so that's where the idea of this kind of massive hairstyle came into it. And again, nice fun way kind of illustrating using kind of cross-hatching techniques. And I quite like the use of the heavy line as well around the edge. So that was massive. So we're actually coming towards the end now. So this one is day 30, and I really enjoyed this. Spent a few hours on this one because lots of kind of fine line work using the really kind of the smallest, I think it was a 0.05 fine liner, and to create all the details inside of this kind of knitted onesie. And so the idea is holding on to this firework, and you've got these fireworks exploding, and so the idea kind of what a rush, you know, that kind of adrenaline junkie. And again, initially when I thought of that word rush, I did think of that statement, what a rush, and that comes back from my wrestling days. So you may remember the tag team Legion of Doom, who are no longer with us, unfortunately. And so I was going to create a portrait of those, but as this year I didn't want too many kind of pop culture references, I wanted them to be more of my own ideas. I thought I'd do something different, hence why I've got this kind of, again, this llama guy holding on to a firework rocket as it's about to explode, which is a bit of a dark end, really. So he looks quite happy now, but just wait a few minutes. And then finally, a bit of a preview of what tomorrow's would be, day 31. And so I've got 31 there. And yeah, it was fire for that one. So I like the idea of a matchstick, but I thought I'd give him kind of human features. And really, because Inktober is all about kind of coming up with ideas, using your imagination. And it's been really hard at times, so I feel a bit kind of drained now as I've kind of got through these 31 days. So the idea is that the matchbox of ideas is kind of empty, and I've kind of, yeah, burnt out all of those ideas from the past 31 days, and this is the final one, this kind of character kind of in a thinking pose. So I just want to add a bit of a wash around here just to make that pop a little bit more, to look a little bit more like a flame, and then that one's complete. And so that brings us to the end of Inktober for 2023. So hopefully you've enjoyed me kind of walking you through those ideas. Please do leave some feedback, because that would really encourage me. And feel free to ask any questions. Please like and subscribe. And I'll see you with the next video very soon.